Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'm Tom Connors. With me is a partner in crime of mine, Script Doctor. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
This is a bit of an impromptu show. For those who don't understand what's going on here, I'll give you a little bit of background. I'd kind of come up with this concept of talking about what I considered good B movies, right? And then it was like, well, there's good A movies too that aren't exactly, looked upon as good. And so it all kind of like conglomerated into this idea, and I'm like, Script and I need to do a show, right? So it all just came together like this. It's like, you know what? Let's do it. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a B-rated A movie, but any other time on the show, we'll talk about an A-rated B movie or something else. We'll get into what the concept of that is maybe a little bit later, and you'll kind of understand as we get into the conversation. But no, this is kind of a testing ground. This is the first episode. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Each week we'll pick a movie, maybe two, depending on how the conversations go here tonight. We'll decide how that is. But hello to all of you joining us so far in the chat. We got It's Courtney's Fellowship of Oddballs, Cosmic Swirls here, D. Bud Martin, Ryan Geiger. I saw Too Much 77. Steven, a.k.a. Deleted Scenes, is here. Sandy Q is here. We also have John Cipolla, if I'm saying that right, or is it Chipola? Capola?
Cipolla?
One of those. E. Clay Thomason is also here. How you doing? I saw Arasaka here earlier as well. Brightest Day was one of the first ones. Hello, everybody. Marks47 is here. Mohammed said, Fatal J. What up, Fatal J? How you doing?
Hey, Fatal.
I got your...
Where's my comic?
I got my comic. You probably are having issues considering where you're at.
Yeah, probably.
Well, we're not going to talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife. We already talked about that one, and it is good. It is very good. Tonight we're actually going to talk about what we consider the underappreciated and overbeaten up upon Ghostbusters 2 from 1989. Isn't that right, Script?
That is correct.
Now, first of all, both of us obviously love the first film. Most people do. It's hard. You're hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't like Ghostbusters, I think. At least
I would agree with that, yeah. It was such a phenomenon.
Right, and even kids who saw it later on. I mean, I've ran into a few people here and there like, oh, it's all right or whatever, but until this 2016 film came out, I never heard anybody go, oh, it's overrated, it's not that good of a film. You had articles coming out saying, oh, it's a bad movie and stuff like that. So, to me, it's one of those movies like Back to the Future and Star Wars where pretty much everybody's seen it and everybody loves it for the most part. It's pretty universally loved. Mm-hmm. And Dan, I can see your bias here. Look at your icon there. People forget that Dan Aykroyd did blackface, didn't they? That is still one of the most
That's a great name, though.
Hey, Steven, thank you for the super chat. He says, hail, Tom, Script and fellow wrenches and chat. Have I made you a wrench yet, Steven? Let me check. I griped at Andre about it the other day. I don't know if I have. Let's see here. Oh, you guys are getting an echo? That's right, because I haven't switched my... That's my fault. Let's fix that right now. Now it should be better. All right, now you guys shouldn't be getting an echo anymore, and I shouldn't be coming through in stereo. For karaoke, I flip it over to stereo just so it sounds better. All right. I don't know about it being hidden. It was last-minute culture.
Yeah, quite literally last minute.
And again, to reiterate for those who are coming in a little bit later than the few that were here first, yeah, what this show is each week Script and I are going to pick a movie, maybe two, that we feel like is a B movie that is much better than most B movies are, or like a sequel like Ghostbusters 2 that we think is a pretty good movie but gets beaten up on unfairly. And getting to that, Script, wouldn't you say that Ghostbusters 2 clearly gets shit on quite often? I mean, in fact, in the last few days, I've heard quite a few people debate how well or how much they hate the movie or how good it is, especially in comparison to things like the new film and also even the 2016 film. There was even some debate.
Really? I mean, I do know that some of the complaints for Ghostbusters 2 have escalated over the years, but I think some of them are not entirely justified. Like they'll blow it up to be bigger than it actually is with regards to an impact on the story and character and lore. I mean, it's definitely a different film tonally, but it does try to reiterate and rehash some of the tried and true aspects of what the franchise was, and that's really just kind of a byproduct of how sequels were sort of made at that time, and even to a lesser degree to this time. Like you get a lot of the same things that worked in the first film, reiterated again in the sequel. You can take a look at another franchise we were talking to that we might discuss later, like Death Wish. Like five of
Right.
those films kind of have a lot of the same thing going on.
Well, there's almost
So
like there's two different generations of Death Wish films. There's the first two, and then there's 3, 4, and 5.
yeah, I mean, 2 is good, 3 is good.
3 is like different because it was like 10 years after the second one, and it's like almost a completely different tone. Like the
Yes.
first two are very gritty and B movie esque, and like yeah, we talked about those are films that we probably will discuss in a later episode. But yeah, like I think you're right though. You're hitting the nail on the head with Ghostbusters. Because I think I said it the other day. I'm like, it does everything a sequel should do, but it also makes every single mistake that sequels of that time made. And that's where you're getting at, where like it seemingly goes out of its way to make sure it does those similar story beats from the first film, and that's where the movie falters.
Yes. I mean, like what's interesting with the Ghostbusters is that it opens up very differently than you would expect the sequel film to do. Like you have Dana with her kid. You probably, if you're watching for the first time, you're probably assuming that's Pete Bakeman's kid or something.
Right.
And they're doing their own thing, and then all of a sudden you get the opening credits. The Ghostbusters Cadillac is flying through the city, and it's Ray and Winston doing a birthday party. And then they're not Ghostbusters anymore.
Right.
And they've separated. They've gone their separate ways, and it throws you for a loop, but it's really engaging and it's interesting because it's like, oh, why are they not together anymore? What's going on? What's like you have all these questions going through your head as you're being fed information through character and plot. And then it kind of slowly creeps back into the old formula of like, the evil is building up underneath the city. Ghosts are rising and it's getting out of control, and the Ghostbusters have to come back, and so forth and so forth. You have the final end climax, and you even go so far as to have the giant 100-foot tall anthropomorphic thing strolling through
right. And I think we'll get into more
York.
specifics of that as we get going. But you're right. Like that first scene is great because unfortunately for me, because this is where I wanted to kind of kick off, is where we were at the time it came out. Because unfortunately for me, by the time this movie came out, there had been a ton of stuff on the market already for the movie. Like I swear it had been months and months they were dumping like activity books, coloring books. I had the storybook and the novel way before
They had
the
chewing
movie came
gum.
out. They had the cards, right? Like they had all kinds of stuff to where I already knew this whole movie before it came out. Which kind of sucks because it kind of reminded me of Terminator 2 at the time. Like, because it seemed like at first Cameron was trying really hard to keep the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger was not going to be good in the movie a secret until it got out there. Then it was like too late. Because the movie, just like this movie, although more set up in Terminator 2 than this movie, but to where in the beginning you're like, it really sets it up like until the moment happens in the mall of Terminator 2. If you have no idea what that movie's about going into it, only seeing the first film, your assumption is he's the bad guy, and it even sets it up that way until he says, "Come with me if you want to live." Like,
Yeah.
then you know at that moment, oh shit, there's the twist, and that's what Cameron was setting up. And the same thing to a smaller scale here with Ghostbusters 2, where when they're on the way to the birthday party, we don't know they're on their way to the birthday party. Because
No, we
even
don't.
coming into the scene, he's like, where are they? And how many? And all that stuff. It's like it's a setup, like they're going in to bust some ghosts. And then all of a sudden you see it's this room full of kids, and that's the joke, right? So again, like your expectations are played with right off the bat with the movie, especially if you didn't like me know going into the film what it was all about. But like I remember when this movie came out, Batman was a big deal. Like it did kind of suck the air out of the room when it came out. But to me, I wasn't on that Batman train yet. It was all Ghostbusters yet. Like I was still riding high on the series.
Yep.
Like we were just starting to get a lot of the toys because for those who don't know, when the first movie came out, Script and I brought this point up several times, and so is Andre. But I think bears repeating. That first movie wasn't really made as a family or kids movie. It was made to aim towards the same kind of crowd that went to see Stripes and Caddyshack and stuff like that with these guys in it.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
just happened to have this element that appealed to kids. And I think that was, and they did it so well, is because like with Gremlins and a few other movies of the time, they treated the ghosts with the utmost respect and made them scary so that that's what appealed to kids was they saw, okay, these are scary ghosts, but these guys are here to protect us, right? And from an angle of a child, that's how you see it, and then you want to be that. You want to be a Ghostbuster. Because the first night I saw that first movie on VHS, it was snowing to beat hell outside, but I'm outside with a fucking vacuum cleaner strapped to my goddamn back, knocking on my neighbor's door at 10 o'clock at night, going, "You got any ghosts that need busting?" That was how it, like, from that moment on, it was over. Like, done. I'm a Ghostbuster, and until I thought I was a Ninja Turtle. But like, yeah, so like at this point, like Ninja Turtles are starting to come in. But Ghostbusters 2, 5 years after the first movie, it did take some time, but Aykroyd was smart enough. He knew we had to get this series going. We got to get some merchandise out there. And it took them a little while to do, because unlike today, it took them a good amount of time to get a TV show up and running and all that stuff going. Because when the movie came out, there was no merchandise. There was just the soundtrack and some
t-shirts.
random bullshit. Yeah, like t-shirts and stuff like that. That was it. Right? You didn't have
Yeah.
toys. You didn't have nothing.
It took a year and a half for them to get the real Ghostbusters cartoon out, because it came out in '86.
Yes.
And I saw the movie in '86 on TV before I saw the cartoon, and obviously, and I was like 2 years old, and I just loved it. And then you got the cartoon, and then you got all the toys, and that's where all the toys are starting to ramp up, and they're all based off of the cartoon show. And then yeah, I'm not even 5 years old, and I go see this movie in theaters, and it definitely was way more appealing to a kid, to the first one in some regards, because it was differently lit, didn't have any of the frequent smoking, and some of the drier humor was not as sharp.
Stuff, yeah.
But like the jokes that they were able to get into this are absolutely fantastic. I mean, that scene of Dr. Peter Venkman in the doing the talk show is a brilliant scene, because the one guy is predicting the end of the movie, and it's presented as a comic joke, but he's 100% right. He's like, I have a strong belief that the world will end on New Year's Eve, and he's like, well, you're not even thinking about paperback sales or anything. Like, when's the book coming out? And
the book
he's
doesn't
like,
even come out for a couple of weeks yet, and
it's like, you don't have paperback sales, you have no time for a tour, like there's no licensing deal for like he's talking about all the things that a normal scammer would need in order to like make this this book that he has profitable. But unfortunately, that it ends up he's actually 100% true. Like, he just has a real psychic connection. And I always was hoping that one day, the other lady who's predicted to be Valentine's Day in like 2014 or something of that nature, I can't remember, there would be another Ghostbusters movie where it'd be that day. Like, that's the joke. It's like two of them both had psychic things. One was an alien told her, and the other one was, a real guy. It's like they're both true, and it's all both funny. A call back to that joke.
yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because we almost did get a movie around that time, surprisingly, but sadly that was also the year that Harold Ramis left. If I remember correctly, was it 2014 or 13?
I'm just looking up the quotes now. It's actually 2016. Oddly enough, the world will end on February 14th in the year 2016, and I'm like, well, Ghostbusters almost did.
Yeah, that was 2 months or 3 months before Ghostbusters 2016 came out.
Yeah.
Wow. Orville Nation, hey PJ, how you doing, buddy? He says, me too, Tom. Vacuum cleaner helped make a great costume. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And especially if you had like one of those snowsuits we had as a kid, those overall snowsuits that looked like pretty close to overalls, like you were good to go. But yeah, I mean, going into the movie, like you, I was 9 when the movie came out. So I was like the perfect age, like I said, and I get it. In retrospect, going back, I mean, we could sit here for a while and talk about some of the problems with the film, but I think you already kind of hit on what makes this movie, at least on the surface level, not work as well as the first movie. And that was the fact that they did try to present this more as a kid's movie and not even a family film, which, speaking to the new film, I think that's why the new movie works better. Because Jason attacked that one as a family film, even though it's not exactly a comedy like the first movie, or a dark comedy, or a whatever you want to call the first movie. Because I hate calling the first Ghostbusters a comedy, because it's not exactly a comedy. It's a supernatural thriller comedy, like, is the best way I can put it. And I think they even call it something like that on the poster. I remember correctly.
Well, the comedy is definitely in it. And there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
like a
jokes in that first one.
supernatural comedy thriller or something like that they put on the poster. I can't remember, but like again, but like you're right, like because the tone is completely different. It's shot completely different. The score is half different. Like you said, half of the score is done really well, and I will agree with you. Randy Edelman does a good job with half of it, but then the other half of it is like a cartoon score. The soundtrack is something you and I agree upon, since we're talking about the score, because that was something that also kicked this movie off with a big bang, much like the first movie. Because when the first movie came out, I wasn't even aware it was a movie for a little bit. Like I was young, like I was like your age when the first movie came out, when the second movie came out for you, right? So
Yeah.
like for me, I was like I was aware of the song and the song was kind of a thing, but then like all of a sudden I wasn't totally aware of what Ghostbusters were until I think I see like the music video. And even then it was kind of still like, if you see that music video, it still doesn't really tell you it's a movie, right? It's still kind of like, it almost comes off like a commercial in the same way. So like at my age at that time, I just didn't click with me until I don't remember when it finally clicked with me that it was actually a movie. I think I seen a trailer or something at some point, and then because we didn't get to go see it in the theater, I remember that. But at that time was when my dad was working for a company where he'd bring home the stacks of movies that were still in plastic, like 2 weeks before they'd hit the shelves for video. And I remember grabbing that tape and that iconic ghost symbol right on the cover, right? And it was like I knew instantly, like, this is it. This is Ghostbusters. We're gonna watch it, and it just blew my fucking mind. And then so the second movie, I was like badgering my parents for weeks to go see it. like I was relentless on how bad I wanted to go see this movie. It was all I could talk about and all I could think about when it came out. And we got to see it opening day, which is awesome as hell. And it was the first movie I ever got to see in a theater with surround sound. So that also kind of blew me away. That's not totally true. It's the second movie I ever got to see with surround sound. The first one was Land Before Time, but I barely kind of paid it. Well, it was the same year, so it might have been this first because Land Before Time was actually Christmas. So no, I see this first. You're right, or I'm right. I should say.
You're right. Yeah.
Right the first time. I was talking to myself there for a second. So yeah, this was the first movie I saw in surround sound, and then later that Christmas I got to actually see a re-release of Land Before Time in surround sound. So that was like my first experience with that, which was really kind of cool, especially considering the soundtrack that came with this movie. Because as you and I have discussed, it's a great soundtrack. In fact, I'll argue if you take away the Ghostbusters theme by Ray Parker Jr. off the soundtrack of the first movie, Ghostbusters 2 is the superior soundtrack. I mean, in so many different
What are you
ways.
talking about, like with the artists, right?
Yeah, the pop songs, which
Yes.
it doesn't help, and it's kind of unfair because the first soundtrack is more of an EP. It's a lot like the Gremlins soundtrack. There's like 6 pop songs, and then the rest of the soundtrack is made up of actual score. So,
Yes.
so that's kind of what we have here, the same kind of scenario. But again, like just the fact that you've got Elton John, you've got Glenn Fry, you've got Oingo Boingo, you got Bobby Brown doing 2 tracks, you got the new edition doing a track, you've got all
Run
these
DMC.
Run DMC doing their rendition of Ghostbusters. I mean, just those alone, and there's a few other tracks that were not even mentioned. Spirit by Dougie Doug, which was, based on the theme from the movie, Vigo's theme. I mean, great soundtrack. And I got that soundtrack and I listened to it just to the point where I wore out that fucking tape. I shit you not. Like, you couldn't even read the stuff on the tape anymore because my fingers grabbing it every time to turn it over and stuff like that. Like, all the writing was wore off and the tape got to a point where it's just like all shit like that. It was bad. Like this one I wore out. Like I had both soundtracks, but the second one I think I wore out a lot quicker. But yeah, you enjoyed it too. I was gonna let you speak on the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I did. I didn't have I had the CD-ROM soundtrack. Like this is like right around the time when CD-ROM, like CD players became like a more common thing. Like this is the first movie where trying to find a copy to buy in my hometown was incredibly difficult. I think I wasn't able to get one and video opened up in my hometown. Prior to that, you had to get it at the other video stores didn't have it for sale. Growing up in my area, so you have to rent it at the library, and they had the letterbox version, which I thought was awesome because I got to see the whole movie. Because after I watched it in theaters and then you're watching it at home at letterbox, it's the exact same film.
Funnily enough, this was one of the few movies that was released in letterbox on video in the initial release.
Yeah.
Because Columbia was testing ground with letterboxing. This, Karate Kid 3, and like another, I can't remember what other movie it was, all were released in letterboxed, and people complained enough that they ended up re-releasing them in full pan and scam. But like, yeah, like it was kind of weird at the time. I remember that.
It was, but
Gremlins 2 was the other one that was released in letterbox. Yeah.
it was there's that as well. But one thing I did remember is in the early 2000s when they finally released the DVD two-pack set. You go to the Ghostbuster message boards and stuff, and people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I never saw these jokes that Egon Spengler was doing in the lobby at the Cedric Hotel, or all these other things," because the pan and scan back then, like that's how most people saw it. And that was kind of a big resurgence. But then you get the commentary of Ghostbusters 1 and then Ghostbusters 2 with Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis and can't remember who the other. There's another person there.
Dan Aykroyd was there, I think.
Was he? I can't remember that one.
I think so, because that's the one where Harold Ramis points out that he's cut out of all the TV and video versions of the movie.
He's cut out of all the funny things that he was doing.
Yeah, like you were saying, like, because it's specifically like the part you're talking about is where they're like, for the entrapment, we're gonna have to ask for 4,000.
And he's holding up 4 fingers by his ears.
Yeah.
And then for a proton charging 1 finger, $1,000.
Yeah. And then 2 for whatever the containment or whatever it was. Yeah. Trenchman says a good Ghostbusters movie, a possible good Resident Evil movie, and soon Expendables 4. F yeah, baby, and Halo this series. Well, there you go. That's good things to look forward to.
Stuff to look forward to, and I hope they deliver. That's going to be that'll be great.
But yeah, like speaking of the series here or soundtrack here, I actually have this is still in plastic in the long box. This is the original release.
Nice.
Yeah. They actually used to release these in long boxes, kids.
I remember those.
So they could fit with the old record slots were. But it was one of the first soundtracks besides, I think, like La Bamba and stuff that I remember were big deals on CD. Yeah, it was just like everywhere.
I also remember that poster being everywhere with the blue background. That was a pretty fun.
Well, and the other thing was Hardee's was running, and I think it was another company in a few other places in the country, but Hardee's was running this massive deal where they had cups, they had little sound blasters, and you even had like this ectomobile, like it was the world's coolest kids meal thing, because it was the ectomobile and you popped it open and it had like your burger and your fries and all that shit in there. It was so cool, man. Like it was like I went to Hardee's I don't know how many times that fucking summer because of that shit. Floral from Under a Rock says, Professor Script, this is my tuition-free fee for writing lessons on Twitter today. Seriously was laughing when you were...
I think he meant schooling.
Schooling those kidlets. Yeah, I saw some of that. You just must have been a little bored, or...
Yeah, a little bored. I've been building some furniture for my girlfriend all week on my free time, and to get away from it, like she lets me go on my phone to like do work stuff, but I was sneaking onto Twitter, and then I managed to like tweet some industry standards with regards to like film runtimes under Chris Gore's point of like, and a lot of people who I think are ambitious filmmakers but are very, very new don't see the correlation as to why those time frames are an industry standard, and they're trying to challenge me on it, and I'm just pointing out the facts, and it's been a lot of fun because just further supports why it's, as a storyteller, you have to be very responsible with the time that you have. And a movie like Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, they come in under 2 hours.
Yeah, they're both an hour and 45 minutes each.
Yeah, and they're very succinct. And the other part too that we know, especially with not just with the first Ghostbusters, but with Ghostbusters 2, there's a lot on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. And somebody actually, did you see that? Somebody actually went and recut and finished the special effects on the Slimer versus Louis Tully sequence.
Oh, really? I've not checked that out. I got to look for that.
Yeah, it's cool. Somebody finished. I mean, it's not perfect, but they did a really good job of putting it all back together. It's kind of cool. But yeah, for those who don't know, there was a whole little middle sequence. Actually, it was kind of an ongoing little joke, but like this whole little middle sequence that was completely cut out between Lewis and Slimer going after each other and fucking with each other. So Lewis straps himself and damn near kills Janine trying to fucking catch Slimer. It's hilarious. But No, somebody went and cut it all together on YouTube. It's actually pretty easy to find it. Actually, they dropped it not too long ago, so I should share it. That way people can find it. But yeah, no, like even still, like this movie has some great jokes in it too. I mean, now this movie tried a little harder to be a straight up comedy, and this is another conversation we've had where the first film wasn't approached like a movie like Stripes or Caddyshack. It was approached more like movies like An American Werewolf in London, which is actually a horror movie with a lot of humorous elements in it. And that's where I feel like that has more in common with a movie like Ghostbusters, even like The Howling or Gremlins, right? We're talking very dark, dark, dark horror type storylines, but they have comedic elements because of the characters and how they react more so than, just flat out goofy slapstick comedy, which we've seen a lot more of in Ghostbusters too, which, not to bash on the movie, that's where I feel like people
It
differentiate
lost,
the
yeah,
films.
you're
Yes.
absolutely right. It did lose some of the earnest takes on how they performed the comedy. Um, so, like, the other part too, like in the first movie, it's very kind of an honest reaction framed comedy. Like the comedies, these how the characters react and interact with each other and whatnot. And in Ghostbusters 2, it's a little more played up. Like you got Pete Bankman coming in, he grabs the oboe and he starts playing it like a guitar, trying to flirt with Dana. I
Stand
mean
by
that's a
me.
little bit ham-fisted. I do but then in the same scene they contrasted where Egon and Ray are holding baby Oscar, and Dana's like, no, these experiments aren't going to hurt him, and they're like, no, it's not going to do anything, and they're pulling out like these sharp objects and measuring tools and stuff all around. It's like really, it's just bait and switch and quite effective. And later on, you get the joke where Egon's like, I want to run gynecological tests on the mother, and Pete's
Who
like, who
wouldn't?
wouldn't? you know.
I was just going to bring that up. But right here, this picture is kind of a perfect of what we're talking about. Like, I love this scene with the Scoleri brothers, but like Egon and Peter's reactions at first in this scene are completely out of character, right? And that's just
To
them
a point,
playing up
yeah.
the comedy like the Bowery brothers slash, Abbott and Costello bit of it. And I think that's kind of where this movie teeters into that area a little too much. It's a little too self-aware of itself to
A
where
little
like,
bit too self-aware, because the other part too, in the first film, Egon only smiles once, but in the second
right.
one, he smiles quite frequently. It's almost like he's broken out of his shell a little bit more as being a
He's a little
Ghostbuster.
closer to the cartoon version in some ways, yes.
Yeah,
He's a lot more confident in himself, personally, socially, than he was in the first film. Like, he's more internally confident in the first film. In this film, he's a lot more outwardly confident.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I would, and you can. There's actually great grounds to suggest that his time as a Ghostbuster, having to deal with people that are also clients, allowed him to develop social skills
yes.
far more effectively.
Well, I think
Um,
the most Egon scene in the movie is when he's like, let's see what happens when we take away the puppy.
Oh God,
Like,
that entire experiment is brilliant. He's like, this couple is in for marriage counseling. They've been waiting for 2 hours. Now my assistant's asking if they wouldn't mind waiting for another half hour. And he's
yeah,
just
that
doing it
whole
to,
bit is so Egon, right?
yeah, it's beautiful. It's so sadistic, but at the same time, it's like, and then he scans himself after like Dana kisses him on the cheek, and all he's talking, he's just focused on the data, and it's quite good, and like the relationships are very solid. Like you can tell that there's still a foundation there.
Now, Simon, I'll disagree a little bit. I think she acts exactly the same in the movie, but they make her look a little bit too much like she is in the cartoon. But she suffers with the same problem that everybody else does in this movie. And that's what, again, I'm trying not to bash on the movie because that's not what this is about, but like they are almost caricatures of themselves in this movie. That's kind of part of the
Yeah,
problem. And when you have that, that's where Janine, like normally, yeah, we as the audience are like, but wait, she has this thing for Egon. Well, clearly that didn't work out, and they're playing it up more with the whole Lewis Tully thing, and that's the thing. Like, let's be real. Like, it's just it's those two are funner together, so I can see where they went that way. Her
they're
being
very
the more
different type of
dominant force,
contrast. Yeah.
exactly. Like her being the more dominant force in that relationship makes it funny, right?
Yes.
It's a very typical dynamic that you find in those kind of comedies. And again, like the thing with Harold Ramis having a love interest in the first film, it's only funny is because it's a one-sided love.
Yeah, I mean it's a different status game. It's basically Egon is like I'm more focused on science,
He's
spores, molds, and
completely
fungus.
oblivious to a point.
And,
Yeah.
and no, he's actually very oblivious
Well,
to it. He
yeah,
just
he's
doesn't
aware of
care,
it, but yeah,
and
it's
he's
like he
trying
doesn't
to
care.
like be
Yeah.
polite and respectful to her at the same time as a professional. But then you have the counter that with Ghostbusters 2, you got Janine, who's very much a dominant personality, and you got Louis Tully, who is not, and yet there's definitely some chemistry between them. And Louis is trying to man up, but Janine's just like, no, no, it's okay. You don't have to pretend to be a man. I'll
Yeah.
take the lead here. I will hold your hand.
Exactly. Yeah, she has no problems with that. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that dynamic works for me. Like I have no problems with that. Like it didn't bother me at all. And again, like I mean, I loved all the new gadgets we got. I didn't mind. I mean, again, the self-aware part. That's where the 2 logo comes in. Even as a
Yes.
kid at 9, that was where I can see where more people now have issues with the film is because as a kid it didn't bother me as much, but it was one of the few things that kind of got to me. It was like, why would they have the 2 logo on their costume? That makes no sense. Like to me, it was like, okay, I get it for the advertising, but they would still have the same old logo. Like things like that stuck out to me even at 9, where I was like, okay, now I understand looking back at this film and that, where I brought up the self-awareness part, where that's one of the main issues it has. But again, it doesn't bother me nearly as much as some movies because it does do so many things right. And one of the things it does right is make sure that everybody gets to come back and everybody has their place and their fun moments.
And
And they,
yeah, the moments. Yeah.
they all have some great scenes. Even Winston gets like all the stuff he gets to do down in the subway and stuff is great. The whole
Oh
yo,
yeah,
hey,
yeah. Like the
Winston.
ghost
Yeah,
just teasing Winston, and he's like, Winston's like, "What? We better get our proton packs." And guy's like, "Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea." And as they start to work back, the train comes, and then Ray finds the old pneumatic transit, and then it's like he's like, "Well, what about the packs? What about the packs?" He's
guys,
like,
what about the packs? What about the packs? Yeah,
he's got the most logical, like his head is in the right space, but the other two are just too curious to. They have to explore what that is and see it for themselves.
well, yeah. And that's the beauty of their relationship. It all plays well together. And I mean, whether you're playing with Bill, Harold, and Dan, or it's Ernie, Harold, and Dan, and they all work. It's like a
Yeah,
Three Stooges thing. It's like whether you got Curly or Shemp, but they still both work. And and that's the great dynamic. And then all together they work even better, which is even greater. And I feel like that's where this movie shines. And then even stuff like I know people like I love the stuff that Bill's doing with the kid, right?
yeah.
Like all that shit is great stuff. I mean, I know some people don't like it so much, but to me, that's where Bill Murray shines in this film. Is a lot of the stuff where he's between Oscar and Sigourney Weaver and their chemistry,
Oh, their
and
dinner conversation
yeah,
is wonderful.
like I could be whipped back into shape by the end of the century.
And she's like, "Why don't you give me a jingle in the year 2000?" He's like, "I want to give you a jingle now." Like
Well,
he's showing
why
some
don't you give
character
me a
growth.
jingle
Like
right now?
he's on this his own personal redemption. He's very aware of it. He's like, "I screwed up with this girl. She has a kid, but she's all alone, and she needs my help. And if I was more of an adult, I could have, all this would not have happened," type of thing. But like I
Right.
love the other part too, where like after she comes to his apartment, he goes to the museum, he comes back, and he just freaks out subtly because she's like, oh no, she cleaned. It's just like, and every man knows exactly what that means. It means all the stuff that you had is no longer where you left it.
Exactly. He's like, I got subtle levels to dirty.
There's
There's
not
just
just
clean
dirt
and
and
dirty.
clean. There are many subtle layers. See this
Yeah.
shirt? Throw it outside for 20 minutes. Good. It's good as new.
We got this shirt from a girl who got it from Joe himself. We don't want to know how.
You don't need to know how.
I just appreciate it if you wouldn't hose it down.
Your own personal rinse. Oh, even the funny wordplay is like, I'm about to put him down, and Peter's like, "Can I do it?" He's
Can
like,
I do it?
"Sure."
Yeah.
It's like, "You're short, your belly button sticks out too much, and you're a terrible burden on your poor
I
mother." It's
love
like
that.
that's putting him down. I mean, it's got a lot of charm to it that's still consistent
Yeah.
with the first Ghostbusters. It's just they're
It's
coming at it from a different tone and
yes.
angle.
And again, I think it goes all back to the whole self-aware thing. It's the movie itself is too self-aware. The way it's shot, like getting Bo Welch to do the production design, I think was a big miss.
I think she was probably given the not the best of direction, or he
Yeah,
was given not the best of direction to go go through that.
Well,
They're
and just
like,
the design of everything is way too cartoony.
well, yeah, because I'm pretty sure someone was saying, listen, the cartoon is a
Yes.
big hit. It's what is we're using to build this movie off of. You got to find a way to blend it just enough so that the kids are gonna have that same but different type of feel. And I mean, they did blend it quite effectively, but yeah, it's just missing that extra flair that the first one had in regards to tone and approach and the earnest nature within the characters to do it. And at the same time, they're like they did not expect Ghostbusters to be as big as it was. And now when you're doing a sequel, it's like, well, you got to try and make it feel as close to that original one as you can, beat wise, in order to at least capture some of what that lightning was that you got in the first place. And that's
Right.
not an easy thing to do. And that's why we get some of the story beats that are a bit more repetitive.
Here's a great shot from behind the scenes with Jason Reitman talking to
Yes.
Dan Aykroyd, which was really cool. Dr. Meatball says, Weekend at Bernie's 2, the greatest B movie ever or the worst A movie ever? See, now you're kind of getting the whole concept of this. That would
Yes.
be one of the worst A movies ever. I don't think we'd talk about that movie on here. That's the point.
That's where he gets possessed by a chicken, right?
Kind of, sort of, yes. You're not off. Um, Ghostbusters 2 is a B-rated A movie. That is a
Yeah,
F-rated
it's
A
totally
movie.
intended to be an A movie, but it just kind of falls short in a couple of areas. However, there's a fun fact you can do. So, character actor and comedian Kevin Pollak, he has a chat show on his website, and he actually interviews Jason Reitman, and he talks at nauseum about Ghostbusters and all of his other films, and then he also interviews Ivan Reitman, and these are interviews from like 5 almost 10 years ago. I would strongly recommend go checking them out because you get a lot of information that you haven't heard before on the DVD or Blu-ray specials and stuff of that nature. You find out that when Ivan is driving to the film set, Jason's in the car with him, and they're just talking about movies and stuff and what his kid has never seen before, and Ivan wondering, can I pull that off? Can I make that something that could happen? And that's just how the relationship was, and you
Yeah.
kind of see how that echoes with regards to Ghostbusters Afterlife, but you also kind of see how um, Ghostbusters 2 ended up not being as terrible as it could have been if they went full blown with the kid approach.
And here's another great picture of Jason checking out the camera and his dad telling him how. And I think that's an actor who's playing another ghost we never got to see in the background there.
I don't know.
It doesn't look like anything, like it's obviously not somebody on the set. That looks like it's meant to be some kind of ghost that never got made its way into the movie. Because that was what I was curious about.
Ghost or a museum curator.
That's what I was thinking. Like, because like that was why I was like, they should have done more stuff with the museum, right? Like, think of all the cool shit. Like, like think of Night at the Museum kind of thing. Like that the Ghostbusters could have had to interact with and had to deal with before they got to Vigo, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that could have been a cool, but like they didn't even go to that point. But like no, like there's a lot of cool places they could have went with the sequel. But no, overall, I thought Vigo was a really great bad guy. He's not like world ending, like in the way that Zool was. So like you had that kind of aspect to
You
it
had
too.
time, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, it's like he was going to possess a baby, grow up,
Yeah.
and by this time, by actually our current day, he probably would have taken
But
over the
some
world.
ruthless ruler. Yeah. Is the whole thing. But like, no, I mean, I thought he was a really great villain. A bit different than Gozer as far as that goes. And I
Well, he
mean,
was like a mortal that mastered the dark arts. I loved that aspect because one of the coolest themes about Ghostbusters is that there is kind of like a magic versus science thing going on there, even though like Ivo Shandor used science to bring magic to Earth.
yeah, pretty much. And again, like this is the best part, is because like, and that was where I was going with like the whole like you could have done more with the museum thing, because that kind of helps the aspect of why the Ghostbusters can do this stuff and this stuff happens, yet a larger part of the world is like, oh, they're full of shit because it's so concentrated. Like if they would have concentrated it just a little bit more, it might have been a little bit more easy to like buy the whole thing. Especially after like people brought up, well, they had the fucking Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the Statue of Liberty and all this shit walking down, Main
Yeah.
Street.
Oh no, like yeah, but the other part too is like we didn't get to see them explore the other types of ghost classifications and things of that nature. That was all done on the cartoon side of things.
Right.
Um, you also get a little bit of taste of that in the video game, which is rather nice because it's a format that you can actually expand a little bit more within the Ghostbusters lore. But here it's really just focused on this one magician, this one you know is a Babylonian magician or Sumerian? I can't remember.
I think he was
I
Babylonian.
think
It
he was
was Gozer
Babylonian.
was
The other guy was Sumerian. Yeah.
Sumerian, yeah.
This Babylonian god, magician who somehow got himself to the prime location in the world where anger, resentment, bad negative attitudes would allow him to thrive and lead to his resurrection. And it happened to be New York City, which is funny because at that time up until that time in the 20th century, New York was a beautiful place, but at the same time a very contentious one with a lot of attitude, but also a lot of heart. And you had to get through a lot of crap in order to find that heart, actually.
Right.
Because it's a very dense city. It's like several million people in a very small area. Like you're gonna get on people's nerves. And
well, not just that. I mean, even the events of the first Ghostbusters happened in such a small, isolated area that there's probably people in the same town who are probably questioning whether or not it even happened, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And that's the whole thing they kind of set up in the courtroom in the second film, is that the Ghostbusters did it all with a light show and by blowing things up and just basically faking the whole thing, which you could,
it was all a massive con and spectacular thing just to swindle money or grift people out of their hard-earned cash.
City. Yeah.
In the city, yeah.
And the city, yeah, is what I said. Yeah.
Oh, and the city, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing, and here's an overlooked character, I think, quite often, and probably one of my favorite characters from the film.
Yeah.
Janosz. Somebody who never gets talked about enough. Christopher Mcnichols does an excellent job, and I still want to find out where he got this accent from. But he said it is. Somebody sent me a thing. It is based in Slovakian kind of
region area.
Yeah. Janosz. He's just such a lovable character, even though he's the bad guy, but he's not
he's enslaved. He's a victim. Yeah.
And he reminds me a lot of like Surge from Beverly Hills Cop and stuff like that. A lot of these guys where they were, that was kind of the whole thing where Bronson Pinchot got the inspiration was, he's like, you'd go to these art galleries and you get these guys where you could never figure out where the fuck they were from. Couldn't figure out if they were French, Slovakian, or what.
Russian or something. Yeah, Russian. The accent it was ambiguous accent. But I also think he kind of reminds me of like Renfield from like Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is odd because he also plays that character, I think, in Dracula Dead and Loving It.
He does.
But that's kind of his role, but between Vigo and Janosz, it's like he's the handler, the person, the gopher, the get guy, the corporeal being that does the whim of Vigo until Vigo is strong enough to enter our realm.
And William corrects us, and now that he says this, I remember they actually correct somebody in the movie. He's Carpathian, not Babylonian, because somebody else says some Babylonian guy. He's like, no, he's Carpathian. Grand Wazoo sends us a super sticker. Thank you so much for that. Let me see if I can see what it is here. Gotta wait for my chat thing to catch up. It is a pear with a fist bump. Thank you so much for that, Grand Wazoo. We appreciate that. And I'm glad to see so many people in the chat here already. We got almost 200 of you watching. Hit that like button. Please hit that share. We're going to talk for a few more minutes here. Let's see here. Knights of Snoke wants to know, what are the most overrated and underrated superhero films, not just Marvel and DC? Well, actually, that's kind of what this show is going to be about. Well, I'm sure we'll get into a lot of them. That's such a broad question to answer right off the bat. What I would say is probably the most overrated superhero film might actually be the Avengers. Looking back on it, the first
I can
one.
see that.
And underrated,
Punisher, Dolph Lundgren's,
maybe somewhere around there, or like Mystery Men.
Mystery Men's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, very underrated. And in fact, that might be a movie that we wind up talking about at some point. But actually, that's a great question for this kind of a show. That's kind of the whole point of this show, Knights of Snoke. So. Hopefully the future episodes will help you answer some more of those, but just offhand, that's probably my best answers. How about you, Script?
Those are some pretty good answers. I'd probably also add to the mix Blade. I mean, Blade is like it was.
As far as underrated,
Yeah, like it's a really good movie, and it did
yeah.
hit well. But Blade 2 actually got more steam behind it than the first Blade. And because of the first Blade. Trying to think. Someone put in Babo Yogi, Supergirl. Supergirl's a mixed bag. That's like
Yeah.
a C-level B movie.
That's I don't. We might be able to work that one in here. We'll
We could
see.
talk. There is like a foreign extended edition.
Yeah, there's
That. Yeah. That's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, that's one to tackle in the
See,
future.
what's weird is Supergirl actually almost succeeds in doing what Wonder Woman 84 tried to do.
Yes.
In a weird way.
Actually, in a weird way, yeah, it does.
And you'd be the only person I know who'd understand that when I said that. Because they're so similar as far as story-wise. They are very fucking similar.
Plot-wise, they follow some similar beats. They deal with magic. And a person trying to, like there's some familiarity to it. I can make some connections.
I'm thinking about it over time. I don't know if I brought it up at that time, but I was like, this is basically just ripping off Supergirl. Because I think I was watching like the first few minutes in 3D because I got the 3D. They actually brought it out in 3D, and I don't know why I bought it, other than because it was in 3D.
Yeah.
I just watched the first few minutes of it just to see how it looked, and I'm like, this is a lot like Supergirl. I was just like, But yeah, like we had a lot of great movies around this time. Monster Squad will definitely be would you consider that a A-rated B movie? I think that would be more of an A-rated.
I mean, that wasn't meant to be an A movie, but
Was it though?
No, it was really like it was done for cheap. It even joked about the Ghostbusters, but it's a B movie that's way too good to be a B movie.
That's the perfect example of an A-rated B movie. Then maybe we'll do that one on the next one. Or if not, we'll definitely put that on the list.
I love that movie. I love Duncan Ruger, and also Andre is a fan of him because he was also Zorro on the Family Channel series as well.
Zorro.
And did fantastic there. Also a fellow Canadian like myself, which is actually inconsequential, but it's just something.
True. Wild Man Beyond says Ghostbusters 2 is underrated as Predator 2. That's an interesting conversation.
That's a good one. Yeah, Predator 2. I like that as well.
That one might definitely pop up in a later episode. And again, give your guys suggestions down in the comments. That's the beauty of how we're doing this, is it kind of opened up, because originally the idea was just to do B-rated B movies. Like that was the original title, which that kind of really put it in kind of a very tunneled kind of way of how we could do this. But now I kind of the idea came to me. I'm like, let's do this, because Script and I have been talking all week about how we feel like Ghostbusters 2 is a much better movie than people give it credit for. Yeah, it's not nearly as good as the first film, but it's still a great fucking movie. Like it's
still quotable. It still makes you laugh. Like the jokes aren't dated.
Ooh, Lindsay brings up a good one. RoboCop 2. That's one I actually like quite a bit more than most people. I don't know if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy. I mean, I love RoboCop 1, but RoboCop 2 is not bad. I mean, it's good. It has its issues, but it's still good.
It's definitely a B-rated A movie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The Shadow asks Xenobit as far as I think he means an underrated.
I mean, because they tried to make The Shadow an A movie, and if they didn't have that earthquake that destroyed a bunch of their set, and they could have done the ending the way they wanted to, they probably would have done that. I also think Alec Baldwin shouldn't have done as much improv or ad-libbing as he did. But I enjoy The Shadow, a lot.
Andre might even want to get in on that one. SJS Shady, believe it or not, this is a movie that came up in my mind when I thought about this for Christmas, because I actually enjoy Home Alone 2 quite a bit.
Yeah.
Even though in fact, it's very comparable to Ghostbusters 2.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much the same movie.
Yeah, it makes a lot of the same mistakes, but it does all the same things right, like Ghostbusters 2. Two very, very, very similar films in how they handle themselves. Like the first film has a bit more of an earnest tone in Home Alone, not nearly as earnest as Ghostbusters. But when you get to that second film, this is like a flat out cartoon, much like Ghostbusters 2 is in comparison to the first film. Like, because the shit that Harry and Marv go through in the first movie might not have killed them. The second film, those fuckers are dead.
We saw a skeleton of them. I mean, I remember seeing that in the theaters, and when he gets electrocuted, the entire theater just burst their side split open. It was
That's my
just
mom's favorite part. She
yeah.
loves it when Harry screams. Like she loved the fucking tarantula scene in the first movie where he's all ah, ah, like she just. I don't think I've ever heard her laugh so hard as that part, and when he electrocutes himself in the second one for some reason. She loves it when he does the oh thing. I don't know. Certain things set her off like that. I just thought it was hilarious. Wild Man, I was laughing at her more than I was laughing at the movie. Is my point. Wild Man Beyond says Afterlife took a note from Monster Squad, just than more of a note. I think he's trying to say for Monster Squad than just the Goonies. Oh yeah, we're not really talking about Afterlife so much here now, but no, Afterlife totally. You could tell and this is where I keep saying he approached that movie as a fan first and not his father's IP, right?
Yeah.
He approached it as, okay, I grew up with these movies. What are kids my age really going to want to see when they take their kids and grandkids to this movie, right? Like that's what he thought of first and foremost, I think. And that's
And then
where
he just used his film brain to sort of refine it so that it actually do justice to that as the best way he could. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally get where Script and a few other people are coming from who've been a bit more harsher on the movie, but at the same time, it's like I look at it as it could have been a hell of a lot fucking worse, but at the same time, I had more fun watching this movie in the theater than I have had since I think the best time I can think of is probably the original Spider-Man movie, because that's the last time I remember being so thrilled by things I was seeing, because like it was like, seeing a childhood dream come true when I got to see Spider-Man on screen, and it actually looked like he was crawling up the wall and swinging through the city and all these things that we never seen before. Like that's the last time I remember feeling this way. And it wasn't so much I'm seeing things I've never seen before with the Ghostbusters, but it's more like I'm seeing things I never thought I would see before. And McKenna Grace just carries that movie. Like
Yes,
that
she
was the
does.
thing. It was like if the kids didn't work, if especially the main kid, her, didn't work, then this movie would have fell apart. Like that's the thing that really it all fell upon, and I'm just happy to say that she did a bang up job, and hopefully this kid is going to continue to do great work. I don't know much about her.
She's been acting for a long time.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what
think
I've
she's
heard.
going anywhere, and I really hope that her agent, manager, and parents are
Yes,
involved in her life in a healthy way, so that she can, entertain and do some great things for many more years to come.
get her some work with some great directors, and she can do a lot of good things, I think.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
you said it the other day, she was a better actress than the one playing her mom.
she was
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. George, just wanted to say that George is here. How you doing?
Hey George.
Yeah. Wild Man Beyond says my birthday just passed. Well, happy birthday on Wednesday with the Ghostbuster theme party. Awesome. Saw the movie tonight and was just belated celebration. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the film. It sounds like
Yeah, and happy
Xenobit says
birthday.
here's some other very underrated, and these are movies that we might talk about at some point. Meteor Man, especially Blank Man.
Oh yeah,
Xenobit saying,
Blank
yeah,
Man.
Blank Man is a great fucking movie.
David Allen Greer owns that movie. Like it's so good.
Now I gotta ask, do you know anything about this? Because like, there's no real special features or nothing out there. I almost imagine in my head that they presented this movie as a handyman movie, but the studio got cold feet at the last minute and said, "Can you come up with something different but similar?" Does that make sense?
I would not be surprised.
Because don't get me wrong, but like, because Damon already had a similar character called Handyman on Living Color, and it just feels like that's the case. But then again, it's so Blank Man is kind of its own thing. I mean, at the same time, but like Blank Man is very underrated, I think. Meteor Man, meh. I mean, I like
Meteor,
it,
yeah,
but
Meteor Man is. I don't think it was trying to be much more than what it
no,
was.
like that one was, yeah. No, Blank Man, on the other hand, was definitely trying to be an A movie, and it didn't do well when it came out, but I think definitely found an audience on video. I don't know if you agree, but Professor,
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I think probably did. Yeah,
not
it's
as
hard
big
for me
of
to
a cult
remember.
following as some movies, but
Yeah, definitely not. But
no.
it has something to it.
But I know a few people, whenever you bring it up, they like it. CB4, that's another one, Sander. Yeah, that one's definitely one we might talk about at some point. Professor Gray says, what would be in noir universe? Shadow, Phantom, Doc Savage, what else? Oh, yeah, there's plenty of those.
And then well, I mean, Phantom is pulp, more pulpy
Yeah,
than noir. Same with Doc Savage is more
yeah.
pulpy. Shadow bounces between Shadow is still more pulpy than noir, but like Dashiell Hammett does noir, Raymond Chandler does noir. I'm not sure if like the fantastical heroes really cross over into noir so much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think of some consistent noir stuff because one of the 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 aspects of noir is that your protagonist tends to kind of die at the end of the movie at the story. Um, so it's not really built for franchises in that way. But yeah, that's a tricky one. I'm gonna have to ponder on that. That's a good question, Professor Gray.
Yeah. Those are some good ones to think about for sure. Let's see what else we got here. Xenobit says, slap me silly and call me Susie. Okay, Susie. Force of Light. Hey, how you doing?
Hey,
Uh,
ladies.
everybody's showing up tonight. This is awesome. Wild Man Beyond says, what is ironic is that Egon is my favorite character. Actually, he's a lot of people's favorite characters, believe it or not. And I saw the movie tonight on Harold Ramis's birthday. Oh, it is Harold's birthday today.
Oh man,
Shit.
it's a double. It's a double.
I was
Okay.
trying to get my folks to go, damn it. But anyway, Paulus Plain, thank you so much, says Vlad the Impaler of Wallachia,
Wallachia.
Wallachia, Romania is probably a contemporary of Vigo of Carpathia, Carpathian Mountains. I love learning about history and politics with love from Norway, Paulus Plain. What's funny is how much of this shit is probably actually, like, I'm sure like Vigo is made up and so is obviously Gozer, but Dan probably based that shit in actual stuff
On
that he
actual
found.
lore. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've stuff that he read about weird myths and
exactly.
whatnot. Like one of the myths that I had for the Ghostbusters 3 script that I was pitching was about the lost city of Lemuria, and all the things that happened with that. It goes into like some Roman history, some real Roman history, and it was really fun. And maybe that might turn up and be something I can try and sell to Sony again if they're
Yeah.
interested. I doubt they will be, but
See, in K-Mation, this show is perfect for this, but I would say Gremlins 2 is an A-rated A movie, but most people consider it a bad movie. So, like, or at least they did when it came out.
It's well, I mean, it's a bit more meta, kind of like with Ghostbusters, but at the same time, it's like it's still really entertaining. Like
It's
it's
a totally different animal. Like, like we'll definitely have to have a conversation on that. And like Lindsay, this is a great question: is Zardoz an A-rated B movie or a B-rated A movie? That's what this show is all about, and we're gonna get into stuff like that. I think Zardoz is a perfect candidate for this show. Xenobit says it sucked, but League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Oh, there's an interesting one. I actually liked that movie okay. I didn't hate it. But I have not seen it in like 20 fucking years either. How about you, Script?
um League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Gosh, no, I don't. I mean, that's technically what Sean Connery's last film.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it did not go out. Yeah, that was not. It's not a good one.
It's not
Um,
great, but it was all right.
it was all right. Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know
yeah,
if I.
I don't. They introduced Tom Sawyer way too early in that because he wasn't even in the first like graphic novel
Yeah, I
till
don't know if
much
I'd
later.
consider that a B-rated A movie or not. That's more like a C or D level rated A
Yeah,
movie because it was
I
meant
mean,
to be
some
a
of the
big.
special effects were quite good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I like the concept and everything. It just didn't seem to come together real well at the end. Um, but yeah, Rick Moranis was another bit of this movie we didn't get to talk too much about yet that I felt like was underrated. He really gets to shine in the second film and compared to the first film. Um, he gets a little bit more to do. Unfortunately, some of his bits get left on the cutting room floor, as we talked about the Slimer scene. You know what? Let me see if I can find that. We'll show that real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see if I can find the finished one. I did. All right. We'll probably get a claim for it, but oh well. I can always chop it out later if not. Wild Man Beyond says with Afterlife, they'd Cobra Kai the hell out of the Ghostbusters franchise. I agree. I agree. This is the closest thing to Cobra Kai I've seen yet as far as being able to recapture the original plus build upon and move forward. I mean, I know there's some people who have like Script who have issues with it, and that's understandable. And but
But
overall,
they're not issues that make that negatively impact the film's enjoyment. Like that's the thing. They're just
right.
these are things I've noticed, but they don't ruin or take away from my enjoyment. If something were to take away from my enjoyment, then that would be a big I mean, that's not really that's a big issue to address, actually, as opposed to a small one.
Okay, let's take a look at this scene here. This scene is a good example of why Rick Moranis, I think, did a really great job in Ghostbusters 2, and Annie Potts is still hot as hell.
Louis, I'm closing up.
Okay, stink man. It's just you and me, pal. Couple of guys looking for each other. Only one of us did a wee bit better on our SATs. Sucker. Okay, buddy boy. I got you scoped. Are you okay? Sorry, it was an accident. Whoa.
You gave me a heart attack. What are you doing there?
Well, I was just trying to catch that stinky green guy.
Oh, he's all right.
I'm like the 5th Ghostbuster.
Why would you want to be a Ghostbuster if you're already an accountant?
Well, what if one of the guys gets sick or wants to go on an extended vacation, huh? Do me a favor. Don't tell anybody about this, okay? My training is secret.
Sure.
I wish it was still in the movie, but I can understand why a lot of it got trimmed. That and the ending, it really kind of bothered me when that got trimmed too, because a lot of that stuff's in the novel and stuff like that, even in the.
Well, not only that, like if you remember from the trailer, there's a scene where Dan Aykroyd is talking about like the seventh circle of hell, and he's standing outside the museum as it's being engulfed by the slime, and I think he's talking like the mayor and his aide and all that stuff, because they had a different situation where they were making that argument.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one of the scenes where, and going back to what I was saying, where they kept trying to go out of their way to make scenes like the first movie. Maybe they reshot that where they had them put, like maybe in the original version they didn't have that or something. Because I'm trying to remember if the coloring book had that or anything in it.
Well,
I'd have to go
what's
back to my
sad is
novel and shit.
that I was asking a bunch of my friends just a couple days ago to see if they remember having the Ghostbusters 2 screenplay around. And that's when we all kind of realized, like, none of us actually has any of the original drafts or even the shooting script of that. So we're kind of on the hunt looking for it.
Yeah, it'd be neat to see that.
Yeah, because I've got the '83 Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters '83 shooting script, which I sent you a copy to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, that you're absolutely right. Like they recut Winston's scene in 3 different ways to.
I knew it.
To do that, it's all in one. And the thing is, the way they cut it, it flows way better than actually how it went.
Yeah, but unless, like I said, unless you're paying attention, you don't realize that Bill Murray's in 2 places at once.
No, the way that they edit it, they make it look like a day has passed.
Yeah,
because they go from welcome aboard to the close up of Dana and the other musician in another part of the city during another time, and then they talk about, I'll see you Thursday, and then they go back to the basement, and that's where Pete does the EPA stuff, and then because of the establishing shot of the firehouse, we're led to believe that's a different day, and then basically Pete is going from that scene there to pick up Dana. So that's the Thursday. So we're led to believe that everything that happened with Winston was like at the beginning of the week, and then the next day.
But yeah,
like
that
Tuesday,
scene was actually supposed to go after all that. You're right. Yeah, I think so.
It was all before, actually. I think
it before. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was separate then, and I could just tell my editing senses could tell that was all the same scene, and it was just chopped up. And that was my point with that one bit in the new film, is that like there's just that moment where 3 things happen at once, and you're just like, they needed something to break that up a little bit. And but yeah, that was my only real complaint story-wise.
Well, yeah, that if you read the script, it kind of it slows the movie down. It slows the story down a little bit by compacting it all into there, because it's too much information in one small aspect. But when they break it up with with the Dana scene, that makes the pacing a bit more, and it also makes it Winston look like he's been there longer, and he doesn't really have a different change of clothes throughout the entire movie aside from his uniform. So,
that's my point. Yeah, like I said, like that's all one scene. Yeah.
No, not even that. Like even when they're in jail, I think he's wearing like almost the same type of shirt.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And I think that is a subtle implication that Winston is so down on his luck that he can't afford other clothes.
That could be. Well, no, he has the suit when he first shows up too, though.
Well, because he just has the blazer jacket, but it's the same shirt underneath that he's wearing.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and again, that is something that, as I pointed out on Twitter
It's just
yesterday,
a jacket and a tie. Yeah,
that
you're right.
Winston has this loyalty to Ray as a friend because Ray's the one that hired him. Ray's the one that covered Winston when the particle streams were crossed and exploding to protect him, and Winston forms a friendship with Ray, like a really strong one, because they're the buddies that are together. And then when they go into the the river of slime and they get out and they're starting to fight each other, like you see some passion between the two of them. Like they're buddies, and now they're ready to like tear each other apart. And it's Egon that's able to like stop them, and then they realize like, oh man, I can't believe I almost like punched you and all that stuff. And like it's really really cool little like D plot friendship that you see between these two guys. And then you also see the friendship between Winston and Bill Murray's character of Peter when they're doing the slime experiments in the firehouse, and when Pete makes the joke, "Oh, you're not making love to it, are you, Ray?" And
You're
then
not sleeping with
Winston
it, are
picks
you,
up
Ray?
exactly, it's like, it's always the quiet ones.
Always
And
the
it's like,
quiet
that's
ones.
it's hysterical.
Well, it's funny. I think about this. I'm like, I wonder how it really would have went if Eddie Murphy had played that part as originally intended. And I think he would have ended up getting recast in the second film because I don't think he would have showed up.
I don't think he would have shown up, and I also think there might have been, they might not have fit the same
No.
Standard. Like, here's the thing, like Eddie Murphy does like to be the center of attention. I don't blame him for it because he's very good at what he does. But the Ghostbusters itself, again, it goes to an old comedic improvisation technique, which is make the other person in the scene the funny one. And if everybody is doing that, everybody kind of rises up in the scene. And I don't think Eddie Murphy would be much to do that, because even when you take a look at what he does in Beverly Hills Cop, which is a fantastic movie, he is basically trying to like set the bar and have everyone meet him, and he's not really doing much to kind of pick the others up. Like,
I think you're right. I think that's where it would have been different, is you have, because the problem is the thing that works great about the guys, as we brought up before, is they have that Three Stooges dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Harold is the straight, Dan is kind of the sporadic, goofy one, but Bill is the dry, sarcastic one. Now, if you bring Eddie into that mix, he's real good at playing the everyday guy, which he'd have done fine, right? Like that, I think he would have done fine. But in that, he would have been upstaging Bill Murray, and he would have had,
or at least trying to, yeah.
They would have had too similar of characters, I think, bashing. And I don't mean like they would have had problems on the screen, but I think you would have had just too much conflicting, powerful comedic voices there, to where the other guys, they all fit perfectly in there. And then just bringing Winston in, since he isn't traditionally a comedian, and he's, traditionally a dramatically trained actor, he fits better in that role, is my point, because he knows how to take that everyman role and just kind of like put himself in the position of, look, I have no fucking clue what these guys are talking about, but I've seen shit that'll turn you white.
Ernie Hudson, he's a dramatic actor. He took a pay cut to be in Ghostbusters because, I mean, he was told that it was a bigger role, and then he finds out, oh, I'm only in the last hour of the movie. I'm not in the first.
That's my point. Was like earlier with that whole cutting. One of the reasons why I agree with you, why they probably cut that scene up too the way they did, is because the next scene he has after getting hired is the scene with Ray in the car, since they chop out the whole bit where they go up to the
the army fort, the old military fort, yeah.
Where because of that, Winston doesn't have anything to do until they're coming back to town, which is actually the moment just before the climax, really.
Yeah, because right after the containment unit's blown up.
So like you have very little for him to do in that first movie. So I can see that, yeah, if Eddie would have been a part of the mix, it would have been totally different. And I think he would have caused issues coming back for part 2. I don't think he would have, and it would have caused them to either recast or rewrite him out.
Yeah, and I don't think that would have served the story either way. But like, I agree. Ernie Hudson gets a bit more of a prominent role in the second one, and he does it great. And one of the reasons that he does have a bit more role is due to Bill Murray. I mean, Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd had no objections to making Winston a bit more of a player. But like when you're dealing with 4 really good, talented actors, and you got 4 characters to balance, it is tricky to do that equitably. But the other part too is that they didn't put him in positions that would make him feel less important. Well,
that's what's cool about part 2 is, instead of, because like if you've seen a Three Stooges short, there's usually the Three Stooges, and there's a straight. It's usually a woman who needs the Three Stooges to do something for him or whatever, right? In the first movie, Winston is kind of fulfilling that role. They're smart in the second film, like I said, of making him more of a Shemp type role, to where when it's those three off doing the stuff because of Bill not wanting to get slime on him, but it still sets them up to where they have their time together, and it gives Winston so much more to do, right, than he had in the first film, and gives him so much more character. And off that note, as far as cast that we almost didn't get, I feel like Rick Moranis was a much better choice than John Candy, as much as I love John Candy.
Yeah.
I don't think John would have. I think John would have, again, another voice.
I think John would have been too big in a different
Exactly.
direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would have been overpowering like Eddie Murphy would be. And then Grand Wazoo brings up a good point. I'm curious about this, how you feel. Nothing against Murray, but I would love to have seen John Belushi in Ghostbusters. Aykroyd wanted him to be in there, if I remember that correctly. Yes, he wrote Peter Venkman for John Belushi. In fact, he was writing, according to him, a line of his dialogue in Ghostbusters when he got the phone call that John had died.
That is correct. However, I will say this. I don't think John, as much as I love John Belushi as a comedian, I don't think he would have been of solid enough mind to pull off a character like Pete Venkman.
I think it would have been different in a lot of ways, yes.
I don't think it would have had the impact, because if you watch John Belushi's films, he doesn't speak much. And there's a reason. He's usually pretty wasted.
He's all in the eyes. A lot of it, well, not just that, a lot of his acting's in his eyes, and you're right. If
he's wasted, the facial expression guy, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of good shit out of him if he's wasted. The other problem, though, I think he would have played Venkman as a lot more sleazy.
Yeah.
I think you need somebody like Bill to be able to play that role with that kind of sarcasm and that kind of, because let's be real, the character is kind of a pervert, but he's a charming pervert. But if you had John Belushi doing a lot of those same kind of things, saying a lot of those same kind of lines, doing a lot,
you would just be thinking of him from National Lampoon's Animal House.
Again, yeah, his delivery would have been so much different, because Bill Murray has a different kind of,
he has a different cadence than
a panache, or what's the word I'm looking for, savoir-faire or something like that. He has a different kind of way about handling that situation than John does. Like, John was never real good at pulling off the romantic comedy kind of role.
No, he's not. He
tried it. It didn't quite work for him in Continental Divide, and the only scene that he's ever came close is the scene in Blues Brothers, and it works because it's a joke. And it's all because he just gives her the puppy dog eyes and she forgives him, and then he moves on, right? Like, that's the joke. Yep. You can't do that with a character like that here. Bill, you needed somebody like a Bill Murray. See, yeah, Belushi would have fit better as a Winston character, actually.
Oh, probably, yeah. At least in that archetype, the everyman, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I don't even think I could buy him in the Bill Murray role, in a sense that I could even buy him as a psychologist or somebody who has a degree in psychology or anything.
Or in anything, yeah. I mean, because that's what's the funny part about the first Ghostbusters film, is that you can kind of believe that Pete Venkman has earned his degrees, but you also know, because of his attitude and how he presents himself, everybody else doesn't believe or like to call him doctor. Like, even the dean struggles to say the word doctor to Pete Venkman. and then Walter Peck just keeps calling him Mister.
And not only that, you can see Pete Venkman being the guy who took psychology just so he could hit on women.
Or understand women so he can do a better job with them.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, and if Belushi did that, it would just come off, I think, a little too sleazy, as in comparison to Bill Murray. Because Bill Murray doing it is just kind of like, oh, it's an average Joe just being a guy. Because he could come off, I think, I hate to use the word, but I think Belushi doing all the same things would have probably come off a bit too rapey.
Maybe.
I think Bill's able to pull that off with just up to that line. Because, like, I mean, that big debated scene in the first film is, where did he get the Thorazine? It's like, well, you and I have debated that there's probably a reason for that. He probably has the ectomobile. Or no,
he doesn't have the car. Ray and Winston have that. He probably just has a medical pack, because as a licensed psychologist, he would have medication. And Thorazine is to basically help someone who's on drugs, who's going on a bad drug trip.
And the other thing I pointed out that I think you agreed with was the scene that also kind of helps set that up is when they bring Lewis to the station and they're like dropping off or picking up.
Yeah.
Which means they've probably had a lot of crazies dropped off there.
And they've probably also done some things that are borderline breaking the law with the police.
Well,
Like,
the police, you can tell at that point,
property
like the way they
damage.
explain it. Well, not just that, the police, the way they explain it, they've probably been dropping a lot of people off there because, like you said, Bellevue don't want the fucking guy. I don't know what the hell to do with him. Like,
Yeah, those cops aren't, just medical psychologists. Like, they knew that back in the 80s, right?
that's my point. So they're like, well, they don't want him. What do we do with this guy? We can't just let him run around. So they give him to the Ghostbusters. It's probably not the first time they've dropped a crazy person off there.
Yeah, and the deadpan delivery by Janine was brilliant because, again, she's basically wondering, okay, dropping off or picking up, and then they say dropping off, she's like, okay, I'll get the guy now, but if you're picking up, I'd be like, he's not here.
Well, there's that aspect too, but of course, I'm sure there's enough. They probably that's what I love about that scene because they play it like now they've been doing this for months, right?
Yes,
Like this
yes,
is
they have
been months, and not only that, they've been run ragged. This has become routine now. And they do a great way of doing that. And unfortunately, I think that's where the sequel, they missed the opportunity of picking it up. Like, that's where the sequel should have picked up again, right? They should have never had the whole thing with them being out of work. They should have just left the series as kind of quasi-canon. Like it happened-ish like that. Like, for the last few years, they've just been being Ghostbusters. There hasn't been this major event like Gozer since.
They hadn't fought Cthulhu.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's just kind of a like, okay, so then you pick it up and they're like run ragged. You have a beginning bit like that whole thing with like the dropping off or picking up bit. And then you just have Sigourney Weaver walking in again for the first time in God knows how many years because Bill Murray's been so wrapped up in being a Ghostbuster for the last 5 years and running this franchise, right? Because that's the whole thing he was talking about. He wanted to franchise it. But I mean, again, if you do that, then it opens up too many problems writing wise with, well, then why isn't the world used to ghosts being a thing? And I think several people have made the point, and I agree with that, is having the events so isolated in the first two films, like even New York City is a big enough city that the events that happen, you could probably still have people that were far enough away in the city that didn't experience it, but still kind of questioning whether or not it was real. Right? Like in the same thing with the second film as well. Outside of the whole Statue of Liberty thing, that's the thing that kind of,
the 100-foot Marshmallow Man Statue of Liberty thing, that's something that's a little bit trickier to deny. But one of the things that's, I found in my experience growing up, and I've also learned from other people much older than me, is that the best place to hide is in the most densely populated area because nobody's really paying attention to anything that you're doing out there. They're all very much focused on their own lives and their own stresses and things of that nature, so you can get away with a lot, surprisingly.
But I actually prefer like when the Ghostbusters have to show up when there's more of an isolated kind of like Spurgeon activity. It makes more sense to have that plausible deniability between. And I mean, even Paul Rudd's aware of them, right? But he would be, right? Like I like how they pit that in this new movie.
But he would have been in his late teens, early 20s when they were doing their stuff.
Exactly. So like, again, like, and being a scientist the way he is, he would totally be turned on by the idea of parapsychology. So like, it makes sense. Like, I feel like they did a fairly decent job of they didn't recapture lightning in a bottle, but Jason did a pretty damn good of job of trying to remanufacture it.
They definitely got a charge.
That's your problem.
That's for sure. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the problem with some people is that it is manufactured. I'll give you that. But it's damn good. It's sure it's not the original, but it's damn good. It's close to it. And I'm having a hard time picking whether or not Ghostbusters 2 or this one is the better of the films. But the beauty of it is they're so different, right? Like, because Ghostbusters 2 is so much just like the first movie. It's so attached with the first movie. But then again, so is this one. But neither one of them kind of cancel out the other. And yet this movie does kind of, its own ways. The Afterlife one does kind of, it does acknowledge that movie happened. It just doesn't.
It does, because they said 30 years, and that would be 89 to 90, and that's right in the time frame. And Ray talks about like they did too good of a job, and business started slowing down. And that's not after the first when they started the company. That's after they restarted the company.
Exactly. Yes. So Wildman Beyond says, now with Ghostbusters out of the way, the next nostalgic brand to focus on is Cobra Kai Season 4 and Top Gun Maverick. Well, maybe Karate Kid 3 will wind up on a B-rated A movie. Who knows?
Yeah.
I know you and I have had a few discussions about that one, too.
4 might not in that regard. But 4 would definitely be something to talk about. It's like,
what happened?
4 is missing 30 minutes from that movie.
Not just that last bit is the problem.
Oh
Like
God,
up
yeah.
until the last, well, that and just the whole idea of the militant, fucking the militant um security
Ironside, right? Yeah.
kids.
Like
Yeah, that's just a little too much. I mean,
he's like, he's a gym teacher. What the heck's going
right.
on?
You didn't need all that business. I mean, I don't know. And they should have went with women bugging her instead of boys, because you have the Mean Girls aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like they should have went with that anyway. But that's a whole nother conversation. Xenobit says no one ever mentions Condor Man.
I
Actually,
remember
I was just gonna say, Script
Man.
Doctor has mentioned that a couple times actually.
Yeah, the main character has the exact same voice as Regis Philbin. Like,
Yeah, because you said you thought it was Regis growing up or some shit.
I thought it was him. I thought Regis dubbed over the voice for the actor, but yeah, it's no, that's the actor's real voice, and he's a cartoonist. Man. Yeah, he's a cartoonist who ends up working for the U.S. government as a spy.
Wasn't that a Disney movie?
I think it was, yeah.
So would that be considered a B-rated A movie or an A-rated B movie?
I think an A-rated B movie, probably.
All right, well, maybe I'll watch it for you. SJ Shady 0169. I mean, I've seen it maybe when I was a kid, but I don't remember it. Says, you guys notice there is an outside shot near the end that shows that it is day when Dana is in the museum, even though the ending takes place on New Year's Eve at night. The first movie does this too.
Well, let's see. The clouds form over the museum. She goes there the day before New Year's Eve.
Has she been there a whole day? Because she goes there the night they were.
Because she's on a date with. She's on a date with Pete Venkman, and night, that's when Oscar's kidnapped. Yeah, and then she goes. I think she's there for more than a day because there's enough time for the Ghostbusters who have been committed, and then there for at least a day talking to Bill Murray's brother. Before they're,
I think that's all the same day. I think it's the night they go to dinner. You're right. Like she goes there the night they go, the same night they went to dinner.
Yes.
And then she's there throughout the entire day. Like you're right. That morning is like that, and then all that happens getting into the nighttime of New Year's Eve. So then that's when the Ghostbusters are let out. I think that's the time. So
I think it starts like the evening of the 29th, and then the 30th, and then or at least the evening of the 29th, and 30th is the whole day where they're stuck in the museum and stuck in the mental institution, and then they get out on New Year's Eve, the 31st, and they're doing everything they can. And the sky has already like been covered in dark evil clouds, so you don't even know what time of day it is at noon,
right?
When you look outside.
And then for the first movie, I think I know the part you're talking about, but they actually show time progressively getting darker in those scenes because you have the containment unit bust open, Dana bursts through the wall of or actually goes, or Zool or whatever, busts open the wall,
busts open her apartment. Yep.
And you see in 2 or 3 shots as it's getting darker and darker between the time that the Keymaster shows up and they go upstairs. So then by the time they get upstairs, it's nighttime.
Well, when the Ghostbusters show up, it's daytime. Then the road breaks open, and then they climb up the stairs. But they're climbing up 20 stories, so they could be. And we don't know exactly what time it is during the day, but it's probably like around 6:30.
That's what I mean. By the time they get up there, sun is down. Nighttime. Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they actually show through the destruction in Dana's apartment that it is starting to get darker too. That was my other point. Yeah.
Yes, that is also true. When you take that one shot where they're lying on top of the thing after they've consummated, it's already like duskish kind of.
Yeah.
And that's before they, I think, go up the stairs, right?
I believe so. Yes, just before. And then the Ghostbusters are still walking up the stairs. The shot after that, if I remember, they're like, "Let me know when we get to whatever level. I'm going to throw up."
Yeah. And then they get to like the 20th floor. It's like, okay, where is it? At the end of the hall. And they're like, yeah, of course it is. Still further to go.
Yeah. SJ Shady. I think that's the point. But unless you mean something else, let me know. You don't have to send another super chat. Just let us know in the chat. Plowless Plain says Vlad the Impaler of Wakala, pronunciation of Wakala or Wallachia.
Wallachia. Oh, okay.
Wallachia. Yes, Sadie. I know you were out not even an hour ago. You can just chill, or just over an hour ago. You don't have to go that bad. I know, you just wanted the attention. Wild Man Beyond says, all this talk about Ghostbusters 2 being canon with Afterlife, what about the video game? I'm pretty sure the video game is not.
It's hard to tell because, like, there's, again, the villain in the video game was the spirit of Ivo Shandor.
That's true.
The video game takes place, I think, in 91, so that's still within the 30-year time frame. Mostly by happen chance because again,
I mean, that could have been
supposed to come out last year. So
yeah, that could have been the event that that sent Egon down the path he was on. That could very well be. Again, I
Yeah,
want to
because
see the movie
yeah,
again. There could be Easter eggs that we missed.
that's yeah. I think there's tons of Easter eggs that
There's
were.
tons in the, in his little underground bunker thing, like all that shit. Like, because the toaster's down there, the colander's down there. There's all kinds of shit. So I'm sure there might be some kind of callback to the video game that we missed.
I like how that's the first thing a podcast puts on when he gets in that room. He puts on
Yes,
the
I know.
Yeah, like I think the video game is canon because even like what Aykroyd and Ramis and Murray and Reitman all said, it's like if we can never make a third Ghostbusters film, that video game is it.
Yeah. Xenobit says John Candy and Belushi should have been ghosts. Well, maybe John Candy is the ghost of Muncher.
Well, I mean, if not Muncher, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, because he's definitely like
go.
big and cheerful, and we all know
That's
that
true.
Onion Head is John Belushi or Slimer.
Yeah. But I mean, I could see Muncher in this case since John was still alive through the first two films. But I mean, I kind of felt that like I didn't love Muncher, but I was just like, you could have just had Slimer.
I mean, he was used quite cleverly in the film.
Yeah, he was, but I mean, it was like at that point where you're just like, it could have just been Slimer.
It could have just been Slimer, yeah.
Because he's the least of the, like he's not that much of a threat to the kids in the same way that Muncher kind of was. They were very similar ghosts. They're probably the same type of ghost. If you want to, I don't know the exact class.
Class 4 free roaming vapor.
I think they are the same. Yeah, that eat things. So yeah. I mean, that was my not to get into spoilers. That was one of my other bummers as far as no cameo by. I mean, come on. But anyway, for those who know already,
Slimer's in New York.
Yeah, I know. Wild Man Beyond says if they continue to the GB franchise in movies or streaming series, they should have Chevy Chase, Martin Short, Steve Martin, or Eddie Murphy.
Everybody on that list except for Steve Martin was offered a role in Ghostbusters.
And not only that, I think they're all pretty old except for Eddie Murphy.
Well, Martin Short can probably.
Yeah, they originally thought of.
Girl.
I think Steve Martin and Chevy Chase were on the list of possibilities for Peter before they.
Chevy Chase was for Venkman. Steve Martin was not offered, I don't think. Martin Short was one of the contenders for Louis Tully.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Eddie Murphy, obviously Winston.
Yeah.
And I think, and there's a bunch of other. Steve Gutenberg was offered Venkman and turned it down for Police Academy.
Oh yeah. Eric Winberg says, "Hail and happy Saturday, all." Yes, and hopefully you guys enjoy this show. We're going to be wrapping things up here pretty soon, but so far it's been a pretty good success, I'd say. Wild Man Beyond says, "I want to see Ghostbusters movie in Chicago since it was supposed to be the original location, and the city is now getting big rep for production." Well, and I think that had more to do with the whole John Belushi connection and Blues Brothers and all that stuff, and that's probably when.
Well, that's like the second city. That's where they started their stuff. Now the other part too is like there's contention. There's stuff they're going to do. They want to do a Ghostbusters Chicago. They want to do a Ghostbusters Washington State. I think it was maybe Portland or somewhere in Oregon. Oh yeah, I'm not Portland.
I can't remember. There was supposed to be all this.
They wanted to do one in Toronto because Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd wanted to do one using the old Second City main stage in downtown by the Tim Sims Playhouse, but that building was then destroyed.
There was supposed to be like a tunnel to Ireland or some shit in the original script for 2 as well.
There's something about that, and I think they had another one for like Florida. That like there's a whole bunch of stuff that was being pitched around by other writers and people within the sphere of Ghostbusters, wanting to do various like either films or TV shows or comic books and stuff in various different locales. All that had like some sort of personal history to like the main cast of Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to remember how the game ends if it would match up with how this.
Shandor's beaten in the game and then whatever. I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything with Ghostbusters Afterlife, but I don't see any contradiction with the game to what we see in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
That's what I was trying to remember because it's been so fucking long since I played the game. How was the music in Ghostbusters Afterlife? Oh, the score is amazing. The only thing I complain about the score is they don't give Elmer Bernstein enough credit up front. I mean, he gets credit in the credits, but like on the soundtrack and shit, it should be like a music by Elmer Bernstein and whatever the new guy's name is, instead of it just being his name, because so much of it is borrowed from Ghostbusters. It's not even funny. Like it's
Yeah, there's a lot.
he does it in different ways. He uses the same kind of similar sounds and instruments and stuff in different tonal renditions, but they're very, on point with the first Ghostbusters. Very much in line with. As far as the pop soundtrack, there isn't one. The most of the movie is
They have like 2 songs, right?
well, no, actually, there's the movie's wall to wall with like classic country and like 60s pop songs here and there throughout this to kind of sell the sleepiness of the town, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the only new song is one by McKenna Grace at the very end during the credits. And I don't know if that's available in some kind of single or on her album or something like that. But they said there's not going to be a pop soundtrack because outside of the original Ghostbusters song, that's it. But there is like a couple of, I'd have to look at the exact names, but like there's a few classic like country and pop songs from like the 60s in there, it seems like. Just in the background of a lot of scenes, like in the diner and stuff like that. Just here and there, just like in the background music. But nothing that I could really pick out right offhand that I could remember. Let's see here. Yep, she sings a song at the end. Yep. Something about ghosts in this house. Well, Man Beyond, Bobby Brown's song is iconic. Well, believe it or not, I believe it was his first #1 hit, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
So I think
that was Take Control, right?
On Her Own, but yeah.
On Her Own, okay.
But like he had done like Every Little Step and a few other songs before that, but I don't know if he ever got a #1 hit until that. I know that was a #1 hit though. And I remember it was on every fucking morning before I went to school, but I loved it, so it didn't matter.
And all the other hits he made cost him a lot of money in court. Oh.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Couldn't help myself, sorry.
That was a good one, though. Yeah, I mean, it definitely pays so much. I mean, even I couldn't even say homage to Elmer Bernstein. Like, it just uses his score pretty much.
Yeah, and Elmer Bernstein actually did something very ironic or in kismet with the Ghostbusters first film, because he was told by another composer that the best thing he can do as a composer when he's scoring a comedy is to not make the music sound comedic, to try and make it sound earnest.
Yeah,
and
didn't he do that
the exact same tone that I think so.
And Stripes as well.
Stripes, he definitely did it for. He kept it earnest because he realized like that's how you can kind of let the actor sort of shine with the music. And ironically enough, if you want to go that way, the entire mandate with the cast was don't act like you're in a comedy.
Yeah, and you're right, Darth Harster. That's why I said the new edition on the soundtrack. Anyway, you're saying.
Yeah, like that was the thing. Like just kind of like what the Zucker said to the cast and crew on Airplane. The Ghostbusters team was basically saying, like, don't act like you're in a comedy, even though you're saying all these funny, lines. Like,
no, you could clearly like mix the Elmer Bernstein music with like a scene from Hellraiser, and it would work.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that's the beauty of that soundtrack. Not so much the second movie, but yeah. But I think with that, I think we're about to wrap things up here. I think we went a little bit longer than we initially anticipated.
Yeah, but almost the length of the movie itself.
Yeah, almost. But I was really glad to see how many people showed up. I wasn't expecting it to be that many people to stick around anyway. At least I thought maybe people would show up and say, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Oh. So like next week we'll come up with another either A-rated B movie or a B-rated A movie. We'll probably try and find a B movie this time. We've got a couple ideas already, but I'm sure we'll decide on something.
Oh, absolutely.
But always give us your ideas in the comments. We appreciate that. Hit that like button, hit that share button, of course, as well. Until then, I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up. Thank you for Script for being here, of course.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Anything else you want to share about your memories of Ghostbusters 2 at all?
It was the first one I was able to see in the movie theater. I absolutely loved it, and I totally wanted a slime blower to go with my proton pack.
And I apologize to the guy who owned the video store that I stopped by every single fucking day and asked, when is Ghostbusters 2 coming out? I don't remember his name, but if he's still alive and he hears this, he's going to be like, that's that fucking kid. I asked him so many times, I think I've told this story before, that he finally seemingly, and I know in retrospect now, got so sick of me asking, he's like, when it comes out, I will let you know and you can rent it for free. It's just you should leave me the fuck alone.
And the lesson learned here, everybody, is to pester.
Pester. All right, yeah. It would piss me off because Batman came out so soon. That's where I think
They rushed that thing.
because they got that out for Christmas of that year, and Ghostbusters 2 didn't come out till like January or March, I want to say. There's at least another, because also Indiana Jones was another one of those at that time I was waiting for as well, but I knew that was another one that came out a little later. But I'm pretty sure Batman was out by Christmas. That when they rushed to the theaters, and I know that for a fact because I found a news report the other day about it. How there was some complaints about it going from the theaters because it was going to video so quickly and it was still playing so well back then.
Yeah, I think they were going. Batman was for a Christmas release because the same thing happened with Batman Returns. That was also released for Christmas.
And they actually, I think they did Lethal Weapon 2 that year as well. And although they didn't complain so much about that one, but at that time, Batman was still playing, especially in smaller secondary theaters in that time period. Because most people, if you don't remember, you actually had theaters where they didn't get a movie for about a month or two.
Yeah, you had to wait. Now that's happening internationally. Poor Andre has to wait a month for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Like I remember my area, they would only run movies in what was called the second run, and that's how they were cheaper, but they would only have one screen, so they were always that many months behind. So we wouldn't get the summer movies until the fall or winter, and so on. So yeah, very rarely did we get anything even close to when it came out, unless it was a bomb. Then they were lucky to get it cheap right away, right?
Yeah. All right.
But all right, kids, let's
think that's it. Yeah.
Let's wrap this up. And I got to come up with an intro and an outro. You hear that, Culture? I'm glad you like the show. But yeah, next week we'll let you know what we're going to talk about. Hopefully more in advance, since this was just kind of spur of the moment, and we'll get it a little bit more better planned, and maybe I can get get an intro and all that good stuff. So yes, Doggo wants out. That is correct. So Ghostbusters, how dare you be so good?
How dare you?
Thank you for being a B-rated A movie.